The match between Joe Yabuki and Carlos Rivera was getting close, and Yoko Shiraki's father told her that she did a very good job making it happen, despite all the discouragement from Robert, Carlos's manager. He praised her for finally giving boxing fans what they wanted, telling her she was a good president and that the match was just around the corner. This was the Battle of the New Year, a highly anticipated fight that fans had been looking forward to as a great way to kick off the upcoming year. Meanwhile, Joe Yabuki was having fun with the kids at the playground, enjoying a carefree moment with them. At the same time, the old man sat outside, crying bitterly. He wept because he saw that Joe Yabuki would probably be mauled by Carlos Rivera, and the thought of it filled him with sorrow. Overcome with emotion, the old man applied so much pressure to the glass he was holding that he broke it, injuring his hand in his anguish for Joe. Finally, the fight hour arrived. The old man, Dan Pei, was massaging Joe Yabuki's back when Joe said, "Old man, did you drink? Your mouth smells like alcohol." Dan Pei replied, "Ah, sorry." Joe told him not to worry, admitting that he had also been drinking for the past few days. It hadn't been easy for him to handle mentally, especially recovering from Rikishi's trauma. A few minutes after the fight started, Joe Yabuki and Carlos Rivera went head-to-head, exchanging blows. Carlos Rivera whipped Joe with punches to the ropes and then delivered a strong punch that sent Joe Yabuki to the floor for a 7 count. As they kept hitting each other in the ring, Joe Yabuki, after being dominated and mauled by Carlos Rivera, managed to land a cross-counter. The entire neighborhood, watching the match from the slums, erupted in celebration, thinking Joe had won. Somebody even ran outside to announce the victory, but when he returned, he saw Carlos Rivera had already stood up, ready to fight again. The old man was shocked once more. They continued trading blows. Joe fell, and then Carlos fell too. Later, in the 4th round, Joe Yabuki found himself pushed to the ropes by Carlos Rivera. Joe smirked, saying, "Finally, if you want to attack, get ready for my cross-counter." Immediately, Carlos pounced, but shockingly, he blocked Joe's cross-counter with his elbow and retaliated with a devastating uppercut that sent Joe flying out of the ring. At this point, it looked like Joe Yabuki was finished. Blood covered his face and mouth. The referee started the count while Carlos Rivera watched, waiting to see if Joe would get up. But the moment the count reached 7, Joe clung to the ropes like the Undertaker and managed to climb back into the ring. The beatdown continued. Carlos kept punishing Joe. When the bell rang at the end of the 4th round, the old man realized Joe had already fainted in his corner. In an emotional and fatherly way, he tried shaking Joe to wake him up, but it wasn't working. He decided to let Joe sleep, thinking that if his body didn't wake up when the bell rang for the 5th round, he would allow Joe to lose by KO, sparing him further damage for the sake of tomorrow. After all, this was just an exhibition match. As he spoke with Nishi, Joe Yabuki suddenly regained consciousness and said, "Sleeping is the same thing as dying. Please, just keep encouraging me, don't worry." The bell rang for round 5, and boom! Carlos Rivera started hitting Joe again. The commentators even said, "The new year is in 9 minutes. I wonder if Joe Yabuki will survive into the new year." It certainly didn't look that way. Carlos Rivera cornered Joe against the ropes and knocked him down for the 2nd time in a row that round. Joe could barely move, and Carlos started wondering what kind of person Yabuki truly was. Stone cold, half dead, yet refusing to quit. Robert then commanded, "Carlos, finish him." But right then, Joe Yabuki realized that falling for the 3rd time would mean an instant KO. Joe began attacking strategically, giving Carlos no room to escape or counter. A few seconds later, Yabuki was backed into the ropes again. Fans were worried, and even the old man yelled, "Joe, leave the ropes! He'll corner you and attack! You'll be thrown out of the ring again like before!" Carlos charged forward, but Joe dodged both of his punches and delivered a wrecking uppercut to Rivera. Carlos collapsed onto the floor, looking lifeless, something strong enough to kill a normal human being. But these were beasts of boxers. Carlos barely made it up at the 8 count. The bell rang, and they both returned to their corners. The following round continued in the same brutal fashion. Fast forward to round 8. Joe Yabuki was completely exhausted. He couldn't get up. He was hallucinating right there in the ring. At this point, something was definitely wrong with his brain. His eyes were closed, yet he kept mumbling,
Wake me up, old man. Wake me up. Danpei hesitated at first, but as the bell rang, he forcefully shook Joe's body while crying. Joe finally woke up. The round continued, and Joe dominated almost the entire 8th round all the way to the final round. Even after the final bell rang, neither man stopped fighting. They weren't willing to break. The referee had to step between them to break it up. The entire crowd stood up and applauded these two warriors for their heart and resilience. Even Yoko Shiraki was amazed, standing on her feet. It was a close match, with Joe closing the gap in the final rounds. The match was declared a draw, 55 points each for Joe Yabuki and Carlos Rivera. At this point, something was already wrong with both fighters. In later episodes, Carlos Rivera would accidentally fall from the plane steps, and Joe Yabuki would probably never be the same again. The next video awaits. Subscribe for more.